Tonight, I want to talk about faith and what has happened to our faith this past year. How it sputters and trickles and leaks away with the nightly news. I'm not even talking about faith in God. I'm talking about faith in life itself and how our culture feeds us a diet of dystopian film and fiction, violent video, gory online games, and the very real news of encroaching climate chaos. It would be hard not to be permeated by a feeling that our world is on a descending slope. Our culture beyond the brink, our earth and all of her species too far gone to save. The mounting troubles, my colleague Alicia Jo Rabin said, of the past few years are like a story arc with a foregone and terrible conclusion. As Jews whose ancestors are alive within us and probably listening in right now, there's a familiar ring. We know all about impending doom, they say. Jewish hatred, fascism, we know that shoe. It's always about to drop, they say. Hey, our ancestors practically invented the term hypervigilance. They bequeathed it to us. It lives right here in our nervous systems. So we come by our hyperrealism honestly, always on the lookout for the moment when this is truly troubling, tips into we're done for. On Yom Kippur, we may come to services ready for the high of togetherness, for an injection of holiness, expecting our faith to be buff. But are you surprised, really, that your faith may feel anemic, a pale version of what it once was? If we're lucky, we catch a glimpse of it when the cantor sings, or when maybe the rabbi is going to wax eloquently. But the prayers themselves can have an unrealness about them, an out of syncness. And really, as I'm speaking right now, I'm fully realizing that this is a naked self-disclosure and may not be the case for you. It is the case for me sometimes. Either way, allow me to say that with the outsized pain in the world, with the unspeakable, unnecessary losses of life, of birds and species that we are all living through right now, how could there not be a low-grade agnosticism creeping in to our hearts? How could our faith remain bulletproof through the past year, pummeled with breaking news from San Antonio, Buffalo, Ukraine? Tonight is a night for confession. So I confess to you that as a rabbi, I have sometimes scared myself with maybe the humanists have it right. And this entire enterprise, this 4 billion year experiment of life on Earth is strictly a Darwinian phenomenon now in the hands of a crazy, flawed and sick 2-legged species. Maybe the ship is going down and disaster is inevitable. Therefore, I'm going to say quickly, I was so deeply relieved to hear the words of Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. He left us on 2020. He was the chief rabbi of Great Britain, who stamped his feet and raged against this notion. He said, and I quote, "Forget the word inevitable. It doesn't exist. Forget it. Delete it. Search and delete. Inevitable does not exist for us." Listen, he said, at these Jewish high holidays, we're going to do the weirdest thing. Now listen carefully. I'm still quoting him. We're going to say a prayer which goes, on Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. And isn't that the perfect statement of fatalism? Our fate has been written over these past 10 days, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to be sealed tomorrow. And then he says, and then precisely 2 minutes later, the entire synagogue erupts with the words, Uteshuva, utefila, utsedaka, penitence, prayer, and charity, avert the evil decree. Nobody ever, he says, nobody ever accepts any verdict as final in Judaism. There is no such thing. Jews completely throw out the concept of inevitability. In the midst of everything we're living through, those words are a balm for the malady of hopelessness. Because all the carnage and the forest fires, the ocean degradation, women's rights, voting rights, the vestiges of democracies slipping away, all of this can leave a person weak in the knees and hopeless. And as Jews, may I say, our fear and our trauma history, we may not have lived through it, but our ancestors certainly did. It can sneak up on us. It can whisper to us cynically that faith in our era, well, how's that working for you? It's a joke. But the long view, not the trauma view, the long view of the Jewish perspective splits the difference. It's prophetic. The long view is radically realistic, hyper-realistic, and also radically hopeful. It tells us, yes, humans can be, by their very nature, destructive, and transformation is always possible. It tells us that history is bleak and recurrent and cyclical, and that miracles are happening all the time. It tells us that just as Nelson Mandela became president after 27 years in a tiny cell, just as the Berlin Wall fell in a day, just as Ukraine now has a Jewish president, and just as the coral reef can recover, just as the women and men in Iran are at this moment in the streets shrieking for their rights, God's grace is worthy of our faith. And humankind, when we come together, when we seek higher ground, when we seize the staff of truth and put our will behind it, humankind can transform reality. Rebecca Solnit says it this way. She says, right now, hope doesn't mean envisioning rosy futures. It means knowing that the worst case scenarios are not inevitable. And every day we are choosing what direction we head in. Every day we are choosing together what direction we head in. Faith in Hebrew is emunah, the same root and same letters as imun, practice, and omanut, art. I love that because faith takes practice. Faith is an art. That is why we are here together tonight, my friends, from around the world. That is why Jews come together every year without fail, to stand at the edge of history together, to look out at the world and practice the art form of faith, to raise ourselves up from the strong seduction of the cultures in which we live that would have us perish in passivity and hopelessness and inevitability. In psychology, we say there is no life. It's hard to be alive without some form of rupture. Every relationship and every person will probably go through some kind of trauma of rupture at some point in their lives. And the point is not to avoid it, but to repair it when it happens so we can move forward stronger than before. Rupture and repair. I want you to remember those two words, rupture and repair. Likewise, in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, our central creation myth, this world was hardwired, they teach us, the Kabbalists teach us, from the beginning for rupture, for breakage, leaving us an ongoing mandate to repair the world, tikkun olam. Rupture, repair. We who have survived thousands of years of rupture face into the facts on the ground with eyes wide open, with heart wide open, with that soft belly and strong back. We meet the breakage, we feel it, we heal it with our love. Rupture and repair. We know about suffering. And we know how to call forth power, not from a God outside of us who will make magic, but from the indwelling presence, the here and now power within us and between us and among us. In Judaism, we call this indwelling presence Shekhinah. And she too reminds us there is no such word as inevitable. Banish that word. The mystics called Shekhinah by many names, and one of them is night, Lila. On this holy night, I wish us all faith. I'd like to end with the words of poet Laura Weaver. An excerpt. The mother of night comes when you are full of the despair of the world, when war and hunger and division seem to be the only language humans know, and the broken-hearted wander with boxes of bones they are still trying to mend. The mother of night touches your scars and speaks the stories of your wounds, even as she heals them. And when you have forgotten who you are, and when you have forgotten what is always possible, and when you have forgotten that birth comes from death, comes from birth, she will show you that sacred circle again. And though you may bend and break and shatter and disperse, she will breathe memory back into those cracks and remind you to stop resisting, to rest, and simply listen to the heartbeat of this sweet night. Thank you.